Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm back today on a Wednesday with our engineer, Mike Herzog. How's it going today?
Doing all right, David. Reporting from the home base this morning.
Yeah, well, winter finally found us. So we keep having these reports of massive snowstorms going to roll through Omaha. And instead, who do they hit? Hit like New Orleans and Houston.
That's what I was going to say.
No.
We're finally catching up to Dallas and Houston and snowfall totals. So that's good for the year.
Actually, I doubt we're going to even be close.
No, no.
It's really sad.
Looking out, it was enough to kind of cover the grass, but not really. I mean, it really was not a whole heck of a lot of snow when everything
We've
was done.
We've had plenty of rain when it's been around 40 degrees,
Mhm.
out, but we just haven't had snow. Today is first day that I'm actually considering shoveling for this winter.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyways, so I want to talk about a couple things. Some of it may not be strictly electric cars. I've been kind of fascinated with Tulsi Gabbard ever since she ran for president as a Democrat a few years
Mhm.
ago. And she really got into it on the debate stage with some other, and now all of a sudden Trump's made her the director of national intelligence. Well, she just got confirmed as the
Okay.
director of national intelligence. I was like, if you got somebody who was a former Democrat congresswoman, and the Republicans embraced her, it's like, if you can't make this person, you know, a
Mhm.
cabinet member, who are you gonna pick?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you couldn't be any more middle of the
Is
road.
she Oklahoma? Is that where she's from?
Hawaii. And I
Hawaii.
think she's native. She might be native Hawaiian. I don't know. I'm not sure what her nationality
Mhm.
actually is. She could be Indian for all I know.
Mhm.
But and anyways, I mean, but former military.
Mhm.
It seems appropriate. She was the one that Hillary called a Russian asset.
Mhm.
So, anyways, um, that was that. But I wanted to talk about something else that came up in the news today, and it came up on one of my on LinkedIn. Um, the new Secretary of Transportation, let's see, Sean Duffy, has said that all NEVI obligations that have been made, contracts that have been signed, those are all going to be funded. They will all get built.
Okay.
Okay. Because there's always been this talk about how there was only 8 chargers installed for all these billions of dollars. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, we know that's not true. They probably installed 8 chargers for $1 million.
But
The rest
yeah,
of that
the
money's
rest
never
of
been
it's been
spent.
allocated. Funds have been allocated, or I guess they call it appropriated when it's Congress. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's out there. That's good to hear. Um,
Well, they keep calling it, the Trump administration keeps calling it the $5 billion EV charging fiasco.
yeah.
And in reality, I think they're not going to dispense all of it, but I think they're probably going to dispense 3 billion of it in building chargers. And you and I both know it's about 80,000 or about 70,000 to buy a charger, another 80,000 to install it.
Mhm.
It's about 150,000 a charger. 3 billion is going to build a lot of damn chargers.
Well,
you
and
know,
there's also it's supplementary funds. I think there's a match component in there, and there's a whole bunch of stuff because I've looked at them pretty closely at a couple of states on what can be allocated towards it, what it can't pay for, and everything like that. So it's just a big fraction of what they're putting in, but there still is a little bit of a match component to get that stuff in there.
yeah, but I estimate that it's not eight. I think it's eventually going to be like 20,000
Yeah, yeah.
chargers. It's not. It's still. It's a drop in the bucket to what the United States probably needs, but
Mhm.
it's something, and it's more than we always hear that criticism of that NEVI program, but part of the real criticism should have been how complicated it was to actually get to the funds. I guess, and in all fairness, I think they tried to make it accountable enough that they maybe felt that these chargers would have a chance of actually making it.
Well, and it's like there was a lot of stipulations. It had to have a really like a 98% uptime rate or 95% uptime rate. It had to be open access data sharing, so anybody could get information out of this, which the industry is really lacking right now, of just basic usage habits. When somebody comes in and plugs in, how long are they there? How long was it actively charging? What time of day did it happen at? And trying to build up profiles. So that was one of the really good things I'm hoping still to see out of it.
Well, Bill and I were discussing yesterday that apparently some of the car companies are suing some of the charging companies, or are doing everything they can to block them from really being able to collect that data.
I can see it.
And
Yeah.
so Tesla, while they're this big data gathering machine, has this huge advantage because they're not fighting with these other manufacturers to figure out when the chargers are busy and how to best
Yeah.
utilize them. And what's happening is the other charging companies are fighting with the car makers because they all want that data and don't think somebody else should have it.
100%,
And
100%.
so they're all
It is it's a known problem right now. If somebody like on my end is like, hey, I want to study grid impacts, I want to do this, like let's build a model out of expected behavior. It's just really hard to come by right now. It's not out in the public space. You pretty much have to have a proprietary data set out there, otherwise it's just not available. But while I was at a utility, this was years ago. We got our hands on a really good data set, and it's true, you could pick out by the charging habits individual vehicles. And this was when there was like three or four of them. Somebody had
it was a Leaf,
a
a Bolt,
Tesla.
or a Tesla.
Exactly. But you could look and just by the amount of energy they took, how frequently they were charging. Okay, like this person drives a Tesla, just because they charge their batteries such a high amount compared to the other profiles. It's kind of cool what you can do with all of it. So all that's to say, I can see why car manufacturers, that makes them a little bit itchy. Like, I don't know. I don't want somebody to do a private study on how our car gets 5 less miles, per charge than we advertise, and that this, that, and the other thing. I get it. I get where they're coming from, but on the same hand, it's like, give me the numbers. I want to see the data.
Yeah, I mean, that data seems necessary to make the industry grow. And like I was saying, Tesla has it. The other companies are fighting over it.
Yep.
And it seems, I don't know, I keep saying they're the one ring to rule them all. They're eventually, it's going to be hard for people to compete with the NACS standard.
I think, well, whatever, if you're going to buy a new electric vehicle, at least you better have an adapter, at least to that standard. That's just the way it is. Otherwise, because they're like multiples of any other high speed level 3 charging network in as far as locations. It's not even close.
Well, they have agreements with about 10 other manufacturers now that are in 2025 adding the NACS port onto the cars. And so you've got that, and you can use that Tesla network.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a big deal. I've seen funny issues where some of the Ford vehicles or Chevy, some of the trucks and stuff, the charging port isn't exactly ideal for the Tesla superchargers.
Oh,
Sometimes they're parked
at real funny angles.
They're parked at angles and interfering with other people using the chargers. It's like, wow, I guess nobody really thought about that, right? And just strange issues as a result of that. All right. So another article saying right now, Ford and GM and other car manufacturers are making a push to keep the EV tax credits, even though Trump's trying to push away from this. And one of the things is, as I've stated this before, it's not fair to the car makers. They've invested in their own infrastructure to be able to support vehicles that, like GM is just now, they're not covering their investment costs. If you accept the investment expense and you just take the current parts and labor cost, they do make money on each EV they sell when you don't factor those sunk costs that they had.
Yeah, sunk costs. Yep, you have a factory, you've got equipment, you have capital on the books. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's not really fair to them. I mean, if you took away the tax credits, the only companies that probably are doing real well still is Tesla and maybe Hyundai,
Okay.
as far as in the US. So, I mean, it's like, I didn't mention Ford, Chrysler, or GM, right? It's like those are the companies that really need it.
Right,
So,
especially GM, with all the investment they've made in lines and product lines, and it's they feel like they jumped both feet into the EV world, and yeah, that would be tough. Now, everything we've been seeing and trends over the past 2 years have said, it's the ship's left port, the train's left the station, whatever you want to look at it. Like the market is there. The
mhm.
market should be self-funding at this point, self-driving. Terrible pun there. But will the $7,500 have an impact? Absolutely, that will have an impact. But I think it might slow down the rate of adoption. But I still lean towards it's out there. I think that the case for those vehicles is starting to make itself.
Well, yeah, there's no question that's happening. Um, so Stanford did a study saying that EV batteries are really living far beyond the previous predictions of lab tests. Um,
Mhm.
Drivers may get, let's say, EV batteries could last 38% longer than previous lab-based estimates had given for batteries, saying that drivers could get as many as an additional 195,000 miles more than researchers believed. Originally, it looks like they believed that they would get about 300,000 miles. Now they're
Mhm.
thinking that they'll all get about 500,000 miles
Wow.
on an EV battery. That's a big difference when you hear people talk about,
Yeah.
oh, they're disposable. EVs are disposable. What are you going to do about these batteries? Well, it's like, well, you should be able to drive the car a lot longer than you would a gas car. Gas engines
Right.
aren't
Yeah.
running.
Once you start getting up to that mileage, I mean, that's your body's going to wear out before the
Mm-hmm.
battery does. I mean, you're going to want to upgrade or new technology. Just I'm ready for a new vehicle to do something different.
Well, if you live in Memphis, your car is going to get totaled out before you ever even reach the battery warranty. So,
We used to when you'd spec equipment and bigger manufacturing stuff, everything would have a life and an expected life, and it's this piece of equipment is going to last 25 years. Well, when they do those studies and put those numbers, like that's 25 years getting the crap beat out of it every day, cycling up, cycling down, going to the extremes, going back and forth and everything. And then you come to find out like, well, no, yes, sometimes that happens, but most days doesn't really get a lot of abuse, doesn't really take a lot of cycles and changes and temperature variations and that. So yeah, on paper, it's supposed to last 25 years. But reality, if you do a decent job taking care of it and don't beat the crap out of it every day, I mean, 50 years, 75 years, I mean, that's very reasonable. So I could see that translating from lab tests of here's how people are going to drive, here's the conditions it's going to be exposed to. And reality is like, well, that's extreme. That's extreme. It gets a break
well,
once in a while.
one of the things, at least for the last few years, had been that EV drivers actually drove like 20 to 25% less than gas car drivers.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, could that part of that be that they just aren't, the drivers themselves aren't hard on cars? Like the
Yeah.
particular people who bought them,
Mhm.
maybe just taking, like you're saying, they tested them hard in the lab, and maybe people in the real world just aren't running them
Yeah.
like
They're
that
not
unless they're driving
They're not
Uber or
flooring
something
it.
like
They're
that.
not slamming on the brakes, those kind of things. I don't know. I don't know. It's great news. I mean, that's really positive, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's a big improvement. All right, so VW has added about another $800,000 to their investment with Rivian, or their commitment, or eight. Did I say eight? Did
You
I say
said
800,000?
800,000.
Eight
I mean,
hundred mil. They're 800 million. Sorry.
David, like, I don't know if that's newsworthy.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just like
maybe.
there was something they were announcing where the government found something where like $70,000 was being wasted. It's like, there's probably probably no congressman even got paid off on that one. You
Yeah,
know,
$70,000.
yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah. It's like,
It took
you
you
know,
cost more to write that report than
yeah.
money.
Let me know when they say, when they save at least $20 million on something they cut, because then
Yeah,
it'll mean more to me. Not that it's not a
not
real
that it's
amount.
not
It's just that
positive. It's just
when
a
you're
good
talking on the
rounding up.
scale of the government,
Yeah,
it's like it's nothing. It's
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I had found this article, and it was from IEEE.org, which is an engineering organization.
Very, very proud
Yeah,
member. Yeah.
and they were the ones who had reported that Volkswagen had bought half of Rivian, but it's just a joint
Oh,
venture.
it's just
Yeah, I
oh,
think in reality, VW is ending up with about 15% of Rivian.
of the total. Yeah.
Yeah, the total company, which would make them still
Because they did what,
second.
like 5 or 6 billion the first time around, something like that.
Yeah, 5 billion. So they're up to around 5.8 billion. But Volkswagen is wanting to get deeper in on the software that Rivian does.
Yep.
And that's why they're putting this money in there. Yesterday, we did a story on Lucid where Peter Rawlinson, the CEO, says
Mhm.
they want to license all of these components that they make to all the other EV manufacturers because they have the most efficient electric engines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
He was the Tesla guy, right? He
yeah,
went on to lose. Okay.
yeah, I went over to Lucid. And there's something
Mhm.
to that, but he was saying at some point he thinks that 80% of Lucid's revenue will be from selling
From
or
licensing.
licensing components to other manufacturers. I have a hard time believing that one unless Lucid still just stop. And he's thinking that Lucid will eventually be selling 1 million cars a year, and they're currently doing around 10,000, if that. And I don't know. That one's a tough one for
Yeah.
me to wrap my head around. But anyways, but Volkswagen wants to have technology, and it probably, I bet some of this is going to go in their Scout vehicles, but
Mhm.
they're looking at also incorporating some of the software to fix issues they had with the Porsche Macan and the e-tron. The original, or the Audi Q6 e-tron,
Mhm.
was delayed by a year or more, and they're thinking that some of this is going to fix some of those problems. So good for them working something out with those guys.
Yeah, it's a good. I agree with the business model. If you're looking for a new revenue stream and what it looks like, and doesn't hurt Lucid sales. Yeah, you bet. If they've got a better widget that can go in there, go for it.
So um, right now, the cheapest self-driving EV you can get worldwide is a Tesla Model 3 that starts at around 32,000.
Mhm.
Well, BYD just added self-driving tech to a $9,555 EV. Okay.
Just when you said that at first, like when I'm shopping for a self-driving car, I don't know if I want the cheapest. What's
No, I get that. I get
cheapest
that.
self-driving?
You know, BYD, while they do make quality cars, at least,
Mhm.
at certain price points, I do have to sometimes think I'm looking at Alibaba or or uh, or what is it, Timu, something
Yeah, yeah.
like that, where it's just super super cheap. Um, I really, that's your whole perception really of Chinese goods to a certain degree,
It's what we grew
and
up with, right? I mean, made in China was synonymous with cheap. It's going to break. It's going to fall apart. And so it's hard to get past that. But on the same hand, yeah, when it's a $9,000 self-driving car, kind of, ooh, I don't know about that.
yeah, hey, I mean, Warren Buffett is behind this, right? To a
For
degree.
BYD.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, it's not coming to the US, but shoot, you could pay the 100% tariff and you're still only at $20,000 or 19 grand here.
Yeah,
That's still an impressive deal
it's
for the
not bad.
US,
Yeah, for a
you
for
know,
a new car that you're gonna have hopefully a little down
self-driving.
maintenance on.
But it only comes with the digital files for driving in China.
Sorry, that's,
Doesn't work anymore.
it doesn't
Oh,
have
I don't
any
look.
bugs.
I'm not trying to criticize BYD. This
No,
is just,
I love it. I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah. We have
cool. It's a
no
great
issue. I
company.
mean, their whole name is "Build Your Dreams." You know, it's it's just fascinating because we look at the average car price for a new car in the United States is $48,000, and here they're selling one for $9,500 with self-driving.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why are cars so expensive here? And it's like, man, you just got to wonder. It's like they're gonna have to tariff the crap out of them. They may have to come up with a 300% tariff because of
Yeah.
that price. I could
Yeah.
still
But once,
see them.
boy, once that door opens and people kind of go, okay, okay, like that's, it doesn't, doesn't explode in my driveway. They're gonna sell. That is priced to sell.
Yeah, it's the Seagull. So
Oh, okay.
um it's the BYD Smart Equipped Seagull 9555.
God,
Tesla's
wasn't that
cheapest
that was
China made models 32,000.
yeah, I that was the price of just a plain old Seagull, right? I mean, pretty close to it. So you gotta
Well, I'm wondering, so if you buy the $32,000 Model
$0.02.
3 in China, you still have to pay like 100
Mhm.
bucks a month for the FSD feature. It's like a separate subscription. You used to, and you probably still can. You could buy it for like $12,000
For
as
like
a
lifetime.
add-on. Yeah, for lifetime. Or you could do, if you do the 100 bucks a month and you have the car for 3 years, it was only $3,600, right?
Mhm.
Comparatively. But that's where you're seeing it. And even in the commercial space, like Rivian, when they sell the vans, they charge a subscription fee on top of selling the vans to provide data back to the fleets. Okay, so that's
Uh,
a popular thing now
oh
in
yeah,
in the EV fleet sales, is because you're able to control so much more of what the vehicle's going doing and collecting data for your organization. So like
yeah,
we were
yeah.
talking about that with data on the charging stations earlier, you're getting fleet data, and they're charging something for that, for managing all of that. So
Hmm.
Ford's cheapest entry level Mach E is 40,000. That's still, a good bit of, I mean, it's just crazy to
Good.
think. I mean, the Seagull, I wouldn't compare wanting if somebody said, oh, would you like a Mach E or a Seagull for the same price? There's no question which one I'm
Yeah,
going for.
yeah.
Okay. Or any of those three vehicles. There's no choice. It's not the BYD. Okay. But, you need a car, $19,000. It's like, damn,
Brand new,
you know,
brand new. Yeah,
yeah, that is really, that's 19,000 if it was in the US with 100% tariff on it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it'd probably still be more than that. They probably sell the dealer for 25, but you're still,
yeah.
we're still talking bargain.
It's still cheap. Still cheap.
Yeah. Um, and it's just really fascinating to see where that's going. I mean, we see these arguments saying, oh, EVs are done for or
Mhm.
whatever. And it's like nobody wants them. It's like, man, when they start being that price, and people start figuring out how cheap it is to charge at home, and it's like get the fuel cost down, the cost of ownership, the car lasts forever. Um, Man, car
I
dealers are going to be in
still I
trouble.
think that's the next wave, and it hasn't quite hit in the US yet of designing a true electric vehicle. And we've seen Cattle do it with some of their innovations
Mhm.
and swappable batteries and things. But boy, if you almost start from the ground up and say what do we really need, and what's kind of a legacy carryover from a combustion engine vehicle, and strip it down and build it back. I think there's going to be, I call it the innovation with the lowercase I, of just steady improvements, manufacturing
Mhm.
improvements, gains, supply chain improvements, cleaning some stuff out. I think that's where it's going to be. I think we're going to see those costs continue to go down in big chunks.
All right. So, um, this is from Mother Jones. Okay.
Mhm.
So take this with a grain of salt. It's a very left-leaning um, news article, but they're talking about why a renewable energy investor thinks it will be hard to kill the IRA. And we've talked about this a few times. Okay. I am definitely not left-leaning. Okay. And so I'm sort of an anomaly in the in the EV space. I like green energy and a lot of that, and I see that it's taking over regardless of anybody's political beliefs. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, and anybody who says they like clean air, it's like, well, just go turn on your car and go, and sit in the garage for a little while with the door down. I mean,
It's pretty
you can do that in an EV. You
pretty
can't do that in a gas
yeah,
car.
pretty clear connection. Pretty clear
Yeah.
connection. Feel that way. Yeah.
I'm not telling anybody to go kill themselves. I'm just saying that, it's safe to do it in an electric car. It's not safe to
Mhm.
go do it in a gas car. It's like, don't try to pretend that there's not harmful things coming out of the back of the car,
Yeah.
you know. But anyways, um, and I'm not really sure about this. Republicans have promised to cut key components of the Inflation Reduction Act, but what would those key components be? I mean, the thing is, we have all of this infrastructure investment that created jobs, green jobs, in red states, Georgia, the Carolinas,
Mhm.
several others, but Georgia's been by far the biggest benefactor. And I think it's just really tough because I don't think that very many people recognize how much this really benefited. I'm not sure when the law was written. Nobody anticipated it was all going to go to Georgia, because this was the choice of the manufacturers.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't.
No, just here's funding for it. Go pick what makes sense for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and the manufacturers all looked, and it's like, well, Georgia is the most pro-manufacturing state in the country, and it's like, and the weather is kind of nice,
Yeah.
or whatever, and they decided to go there. And I think that's kind of fascinating. Mother Jones had interviewed Carl Weatherly White, who's the head of capital markets for a company called Greenbacker. Now, Greenbacker obviously is doing something. They're a renewable energy investing company with 450 projects around the U.S., so they know a little bit. And they're asking him, do they think renewable energy projects will be hit by a new Trump administration? It's unlikely that it will be repealed, but you'll have some turmoil. A lot of the projects under development will have either to renegotiate their power purchase agreements to get higher pricing. If they cannot do that, they would have to kill the projects. I just, personally, I just don't see a full repeal coming on, because it was like the thing with having Jigger Shaw on
Mhm.
recently. He listening to him talk, um, and not knowing that he'd been nominated by Biden.
Mhm.
If I hadn't known those things, I wouldn't have been able to necessarily pick his political affiliation. He
Mhm.
seemed very nonpartisan, and it's like he's not like a diehard EV fan. He was like, "Hey, I
Yeah.
got my mom to get a plug-in hybrid because I didn't want her to have to figure out the intricacies of level 3 charging." Okay, and it's like, I guess I can get that. I mean, it's like trying to teach my mom to use a phone app is a real challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or how to send a picture from her text messages or something like that. Okay.
Mhm.
So maybe level 3 charging. And he was also saying, the thing is, if you have an adapter, those adapters are heavy. So that's another thing.
That's an interesting
That
perspective. That's an
well, and
interesting.
that's not something I'd ever heard anybody else really
No.
discuss. And it's like,
Well, and
yeah, that's
it's similar like what you mentioned earlier, people having to park funny, like those
right.
end of line weird physical consideration. Oh, it's heavy and inconvenient. Like, huh? Yeah, I
Well, the other thing
suppose
that's
it is.
come up is, so let's say you went and you bought a brand new Chevy Silverado EV. So
Hmm.
you could tow because it's got that big 200 kilowatt hour battery and is capable of towing. And then you go to a supercharger and there's not a way you can pull straight through with your
With your
trailer.
load. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that was something that nobody'd really considered when they
Mhm.
started putting in the EV chargers. It needs to be set up like a gas station.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
reason they're set up the way they
Yeah.
are.
And so, yeah, there's some shortcomings out there. We talk about it all the time. It's like we
Yeah.
know the bad things. You
Yeah.
and I know the bad things about EVs, and
But
it's
it's
not what people are
it's
talking
down
about.
there with everything else. I mean, okay, yeah, well, next generation we'll clean up. We'll fix those.
Yeah.
The IRA funding, I had heard that just it literally takes an act of Congress to pull that back, and that's where some of this is going to end up in courts. What do they have to do? And just because of that, the margin right now is what, one or two congressional folks, and they said they had 20 plus people lined up who would all say no, you need to keep the funding. Republicans willing to cross the aisle of made it very clear up front, like, I will vote to keep this funding because it benefits my state and my district a lot. Like, I'm not going to say no, pull all of this back. So now, can they do it in bits and pieces? Can they, cherry pick? Can they sit on certain piles of it, in perpetuity? Maybe. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's going to be really, really hard to go back.
I suspect there was a lot of pork in the IRA that, while we've covered the certain things that were successful with the project, that people try to point. I don't even think NEVI was part of the IRA. I think that was part of a different
I think
infrastructure
that was
bill.
DOT. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that there's probably some pork projects in there. It's tough. It's tough because in order to get your law passed, a lot of times you've got to stick that pork project in there to get the couple of congressmen and senators who are going to be needed to make that fly, pass. And like I said, I just remember when the IRA came out, nobody really knew what it was going to do. Who thought it was going to create all these jobs in Georgia? I mean, that was not 90% of all the, I think we saw it was like 120,000 jobs. 90% of those went to red states.
The red states. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's like, oh, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this shouldn't have been a partisan issue because the IRA, I don't think, got any Republican votes to pass it when it went through.
Sure, that sounds about
Okay.
right.
And it seems now in hindsight, it's like, oh, that might have been something good to have voted for because it was good for my constituency. Um, you know, I often wonder when those things come up when it's like, hey, this is clearly good for your constituents. Why would you oppose something? But I talk about this all the time. I think a lot of politics is theater. I mean, I mean, you watch clips and news like, I got this guy, I burned him because I said something really witty on CNBC, and it's like, just help the people. I don't know what's going on, but I see this so much in government. Bill sent me an article from something called the Berkshire Eagle, berkshireeagle.com. And I don't know if that's related to Berkshire Hathaway or, in the Berkshire Mountains. I don't, maybe it's overseas. I don't know. But we like to talk about corruption. Okay. Because I'm always talking about how, one thing you'll notice on EV World, I don't like politicians a whole lot. Okay. So I'm not saying I'm anti-government. It's just, it's the dark reality of what you have to have it, right? You have to have, somebody has to be in charge and somebody has to be making decisions, but that doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Okay. Yeah. But, Bill sent me this because he knows we did a show one time on the most corrupt countries in the world. So I found this kind of fascinating. I'm going to guess that the darker the country, the more corrupt it is. And there's a few that just get off the charts here. It doesn't go into great detail on this. It just says corruption perception. Corruption plays a devastating role in the climate crisis. Well, you start getting into some of these countries. I mean, look at this one down here. Look at how dark that is, or over here on Somalia.
I know that one's Somalia.
Yeah.
I see
Colombia is real high on the corruption index over here. Well, that's not, no, I'm sorry, that's Venezuela.
That's Venezuela.
This is Colombia here.
That's Colombia.
Yeah, it helps if I know my countries, right? Yeah, I'm an American. I'm not supposed to know my countries. I think America's over here somewhere. There's the 51st state up here. God,
over in Asia, I think I see a couple of the stands.
Yeah, let's see here. Well, this is Afghanistan. Um,
Like a
this is,
Kyrgyzstan or
I think
Turkmenistan?
this is Tajikistan up here.
No idea.
Um, Not sure about this one. It might be Turkmenistan because I think this is,
That's
this is Kazakhstan here. Yeah, not sure.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, but some of them, um, Myanmar over here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
no.
it's interesting to see them. Apparently, it looks like Norway and Sweden and Finland and Australia and Canada are less corrupt than the United States.
Mhm.
Oh, that that seems like a interesting chart. But let's see. Two-thirds of countries scored below 50 out of 100, with a global average 43 out of 100 as far as
But this is
corruption.
like just people's perception on how corrupt they are, or like some
I
type of
don't,
measurable. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know how they measure some of this. Oh, South Africa, Vietnam, and Indonesia exemplify how corruption is derailing climate initiatives. In South Africa, the former CEO of Eskom estimated in 2023 the energy provider loses roughly $55 million per month. Corruption, I guess that's due to corruption. Corruption has also hampered climate-related projects in countries like Somalia and South Sudan, where climate change is worsening ongoing crises. The only thing is those countries have, like, active conflicts going on in them. Armed rebellion and stuff like that.
Mhm.
How do you who would invest in a clean energy or any energy infrastructure project in one of those countries? I mean,
Yeah,
that wouldn't make any sense. Why would you put money
I
into
know
that?
anecdotally from a lot of Saharan Africa and some basically all over Africa. I mean, it is pay to play no matter what you do. I mean, it is pay to get in the door. It is that's just doing business there. I mean, it's the cliche like briefcases full of cash, and that's just to get into the door. That's to get elected. I mean, it's there's a lot of money changing hands, and uh, yeah, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I've had enough times where I've said I've had politicians reach out for a donation in order
Yeah,
to help me with
I'd
a
love to talk
project they
to
heard I
like
was
maybe
doing.
talk to my donate campaign donation office.
Yeah,
They'll hook you up with an appointment with me. Yeah.
yeah, and we'll get you green lighted right through all the permitting process and everything. It'll be no
Mhm.
problem getting your project underway. Yeah, it's I find that fascinating when I get those calls, and it's like, oh God, I'm not doing this. I just not
Yeah.
going to get into that game.
Mhm.
Um, it makes life too difficult. Anyways, Mike, that's all we got to cover for
Yeah.
today. Folks, I want to thank y'all for, chiming in and listening to Mike and I ramble on. I'll be back with Bill tomorrow. And we got a few interesting people lined up. You need to um, reach out to that guy and let him know. We'd love to have him on.
Yep. Yep.
See what a good Wednesday would be for him, and we'll go from there. Anyways, folks, we'll go ahead and we will be back tomorrow.